Will you revisit 3D mode? No, not really. I'm not that excited about it. It's nice that Zoe FPV is making content again. Good to see her out there. A little back, maybe back on her feet. I don't know. Hopefully. I'm not that interested in it. Carbon Glass Man wants to know. Someone told me the FPV pilot that chases sprint cars at the local track is getting $2,000 a night. Sounds like BS to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Does that sound right? So I would guess, not this, I shouldn't say guess. I would say, based on people I know that work in the industry, and no, I'm not going to tell you anybody's day rate by name, but I would say I know a lot of people who work in the industry, both sort of YouTube personalities and just sort of like people you've probably never heard of who are professional 107 pilots. And I would say that a typical day rate for an FPV pilot is between $600 and $1,200, maybe a little more, depending on what they're doing. If you're flying a Cinewhoop through a bar, you're going to be at the lower end of that spectrum. And basically, you're going to show up, you're going to charge the guy $600 or $800 for the whole video, maybe even including the editing, depending on how complicated the edit is. You're going to do a half day at the bar. You're going to get your footage, you're going to go edit it, and you're going to make $1,000 or something. I don't know. If you're bringing a free fly Alta, a great big, if you're flying like a red $40,000 red camera, you're going to be at the higher end, maybe even off the top of that scale. But I think a round number for what like typical middle of the road FPV pilots are getting is in the $600 to $1,200, maybe a little more range per day. There are pilots out there making $2,000 a day. They are they're at the level of somebody like a Mr. Steele. I'm not saying I don't know what Steele's day rate would be, and obviously it would depend on the job. But like, if I found out Steele was taking $1,000 or $1,200 a day to go work on a set, I'd be like, that seems a little low for him. I would guess he's in the sort of the $2,000 to $2,500 a day range, just because he is extremely prominent. And I also have the feeling he doesn't actually want that kind of work very much. I think it seems to me like he probably finds it a little bit annoying to like show up on set and like be told what to do. Just that's my read on his personality. I would guess he charges extra for that. But at a sprint track, is the guy flying drones at a sprint track making $2,000? I would be surprised to hear that, because I would be surprised to learn that like just a sprint track on a Friday night is pulling in enough in ticket revenue that by the time you trickle down all the employees, you trickle down to the FPV pilot, that they've got $2,000 to pay him. So I would guess that but it depends. It really depends. If there's somebody who is flying like if there's somebody who's flying a drone at a NASCAR race and he was making $2,000, then I wouldn't be that surprised. There's just more money in NASCAR. People are surprised. People are surprised at what FPV pilots charge. People are always surprised. I'm gonna tell. Here's a little story. Once upon a time, I had a little tractor, just a little mini tractor. Nothing big. Had a little front end loader on it. I bought it. It was a little, some people turn 40 and they buy a sports car. I turned 40 and bought a tractor, is the joke I like to tell. I had it for a few years. We had sheep. I used it to move hay bales. Sometimes I would use it to smooth the gravel on my driveway, and just little things. It was completely unnecessary, but I had fun with it. And at one point I thought, maybe I'll try and make a little bit of money by bush hogging. So I had a bush hog. I bought a bush hog, just used off of Craigslist. And I put up an ad on Craigslist and said, hey, I'll bush hog your property. What? Go make a couple $100. Go spend the afternoon bush hogging somebody's property. I did 1 or 2 jobs, and very quickly realized that the going rate for bush hogging was basically like if you just looked at the going rate for bush hogging, it was like $20 an hour or something, $25 an hour. It was more than reasonable. But if you actually added up all your costs, like the gas that went into the tractor, the gas to drive the truck and the trailer, you have to have a trailer to transport the tractor. If you add up all the costs, and especially if you consider that one of these days you're going to be bush hogging a field and bong, you're going to hit something that was in the brush that you didn't see, and you're going to F up your bush hog, you're going to get a flat tire, you're going to have to maintain your tractor. Suddenly that $25 or whatever an hour, suddenly coming home from bush hogging a field for a few hours with $300 in your pocket doesn't seem like such a great deal. And I stopped doing it because I was like, I'm losing money here. And you see that a lot in the FPV space. You see that a lot in all kinds of spaces where somebody is like, I can do this. I'll just charge, beer money. And because they're not treating it like a business, they're not accounting for all of the expenses that go into running a business. And when you meet someone who's an actual professional and they say, it's going to cost me minimum $600 to come out and fly a Cinewhoop at your site for 3 hours, you're like, well, that's ridiculous. I'll do it for $200. And those people, and I'm not going to take a moral stance. Some people would take a moral stance and go, you're undercutting the professionals and you're race to the bottom and you're ruining it for everybody. And it's like, well, sure. But everybody's going to, do what they can to get what they can get. The thing that really happens is the people who are undercutting and not charging enough, eventually they can't afford to do it anymore because they wrecked their quad and they don't have enough money to buy a new quad. So when you hear about professionals charging what seems like a preposterous amount, know that there is also a lot of expenses going into what they're doing. And it's not just like the guy who's charging $1,200 a day is walking home with $1,200 in profit. It's 1,000% not true. What's an average flight time for one of your go-to quads, asks Harry Cash. My 5 inches, a typical flight time is 2.5 to 4 minutes, depending on how hard I'm ripping. Kilo Zebra says, I'm building my first analog quad after a few DJI builds. I can't seem to get camera control working from Betaflight. Am I out of luck and stuck using the joysticks? The camera control pad on a flight controller doesn't necessarily work reliably on all cameras. The XyloStax flight controller does have a camera control pad. That's a good start. But it's a bit of a crapshoot whether it's actually going to work on the cameras. There are CLI options you can use to tune the camera control parameters. And I can't even remember if there's a tutorial for how to do it because so few people use that feature. Here in the Betaflight website, we can change the camera control reference voltage, the key delay. You could try extending the key delay, and you can try changing the internal resistance. If you have a working joystick, you can get the button resistances and see if those button resistances are different. These are some camera control settings you could try to change. I'll put that in the chat. But a lot of times it just doesn't work.